My name is Clara Jensen. I'm 34 years old. And if you'd told me a year ago that I would be divorced before I even had time to realize my marriage was broken, I would have laughed at you. But that night, or rather that early morning at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, I stopped laughing. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses on your ears. I had fallen asleep on the couch with the TV on mute, the soft glow still spilling across the living room. My phone buzzed against the coffee table. One message. From my husband. I remember reaching for it lazily, expecting something mundane. Maybe Ethan had landed safely in Vegas for his conference. Maybe he was drunk texting me some half-hearted miss you, but what I saw snapped the air out of my lungs. A photo loaded first. Ethan, my husband of 6 years, standing in front of a tacky neon-lit wedding chapel with Rebecca, his coworker. They were holding up papers. Marriage certificates. Her bouquet was fake roses, his grin was crooked like a teenager showing off stolen beer. Then the text appeared, written in the tone of a teenager's cruel dare. Just married Rebecca. Been sleeping with her for 8 months. You're pathetic, BEO. Your boring energy made this so easy. Enjoy your sad little life. The words blurred, my hand trembled, but only for a moment. And then, strangely, I felt nothing. No sobs, no rage. Just this hollow numbness, like standing outside my own body. I stared at the message for maybe 30 seconds. The house creaked in the silence. My chest rose and fell too calmly. And then I typed back a single word. Cool. I set the phone down. It buzzed again, almost instantly, but I didn't look. Something inside me, something sharp and steady, snapped into place. Because while Ethan thought he'd just destroyed me, he forgot who actually ran the life he was walking away from. The next hour was a blur of ruthless efficiency. By 3:15 a.m., every card in his wallet was canceled. He had always been sloppy with money. I was the one who kept everything afloat. The house deed? In my name. The accounts? In my name. His credit cards? He was only an authorized user on mine. Click, remove, delete, block. At 3:30, I called a 24-hour locksmith. The man on the line sounded groggy. Emergency lock change at this hour? Yes, I said. My voice was flat and foreign, even to me. I'll pay extra if you come right now. By 4 on Quag, headlights cut across my driveway. The locksmith was a stocky guy with sleepy eyes, but his hands moved quick. He didn't ask questions after I showed him the text. His lips pressed into a thin line, like he'd seen this before. By 5 on Twalk, my house was sealed. New locks, new garage code, passwords updated, Ethan's keys, cards, and codes, all useless now. I stood at the window, watching the night soften into dawn. For the first time in years, I felt not safe, not yet, but in control. I went upstairs, crawled into bed, and slept for 2 solid hours. The pounding woke me. 8 and dry a.m. Sharp. My door rattled under heavy fists. I jolted upright, heart racing, then forced myself calm. I walked downstairs, peeked through the peephole. 2 police officers stood on my porch. One older, with gray at his temples. The other younger, trying to look stern, but already impatient. I opened the door a crack. Ma'am, the older one said, we received a call about a domestic dispute. Your husband claims you locked him out of his home. My husband. The word tasted bitter. I stepped back, pulled my phone from my pocket, and without a word, held up the screen. The infamous Vegas text glowed in the morning light. The older cop leaned in, squinting. His eyebrows shot up. Is this real? The younger one tried to stifle a laugh. His lips twitched. He's not my husband anymore, I said evenly. He married someone else 5 hours ago. They exchanged a glance. The radio crackled on the older officer's shoulder, and a woman's voice, Ethan's mother, I guessed, screeched unintelligibly in the background. Ma'am, the officer sighed into the radio, this isn't a police matter. You'll need to sort it out legally. We can't force her to let him back in if he's married someone else. The screeching grew louder. The older cop winced, turned down the volume. The younger officer shifted awkwardly. She's saying you stole his belongings and money. I exhaled slowly. This house was purchased before marriage. Deeds in my name. The credit cards were mine. He was just an authorized user. I haven't touched his personal belongings. The officers looked at each other again. The older one finally nodded. All right, just don't destroy anything. If he wants his stuff, make sure it's available. Of course, I said. My voice was calm, but inside, my heart was drumming like war. They left. I watched from the window as they walked down the driveway, shaking their heads. When the street was empty again, I closed the curtains and leaned against the wall. Ethan thought he could replace me in one night. He thought Vegas lights and cheap vows would erase everything we built. But the locks had already turned. The door was closed, and for the first time, I realized so was I. By the afternoon, the calm I had built around myself cracked, not because I doubted my decision, but because I knew Ethan well enough to predict what was coming next. And right on cue, around 2 p.m., my doorbell rang. I glanced through the blinds and felt my stomach twist. Ethan stood in the driveway, not alone. Beside him was Rebecca, his new wife, in her cheap white sundress that still had creases from a clearance rack. Flanking them were two familiar figures, Margaret, Ethan's mother, with her perpetual scowl, and Lily, his younger sister, whose smirk always hovered between mean girl and predator. I opened the garage door before they could pound again. I'd been expecting them. Ethan's boxes were stacked neatly by the wall, taped shut, labeled in thick black marker. Clothes, books, electronics. Ethan's swagger faltered when he saw the neat rows. He tried to cover it with a smirk. Wow, efficient. Didn't even wait for me to get back, huh? You didn't come back, I said, my voice steady. You got married. Rebecca shifted awkwardly, tucking her hair behind her ear. For the first time, I noticed the tan line where her engagement ring must have been. It was already gone. Margaret wasted no time. This is outrageous, Clara. A wife doesn't just throw her husband's things into the garage like garbage. I'm not his wife anymore. My words were sharp, cutting. And nothing in there is garbage. It's everything he owns, packed carefully. You should thank me. Lily snorted. Careful. You're a control freak, Clara. Always have been. You're just mad Ethan finally found someone who makes him happy. Rebecca's face tightened at the word happy. Even she didn't look convinced. Ethan stepped forward, puffing out his chest like he thought posturing could erase humiliation. Look, Clara, I get that you're hurt, but you can't just shut me out. This house, I cut him off, was purchased 3 years before I even met you. Your name isn't on the deed, never was. I watched the color drain from his face, replaced by a splotchy red of anger. Margaret snapped, We'll call the police again. You can't just erase a marriage in one night. I let a thin smile curl. Funny, that's exactly what Ethan did. And the police already told you. This isn't your fight anymore. Rebecca shifted, whispering something to Ethan. Her hand brushed his, but he pulled away, jaw tight. You're vindictive, Margaret hissed. You've always tried to control him. That's why he left you. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound startled even me. He didn't leave me, Margaret. He ran from responsibility and straight into Rebecca's arms, which, judging by that U-Haul receipt in your hand, are already empty. Rebecca's face turned pink. She opened her purse, pulled out a card, swiped it through the U-Haul scanner the driver had brought, declined. She tried another, declined again. The silence was thick. Ethan's jaw clenched. He dug into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and threw a credit card at the driver. Fine, use mine. Rebecca's eyes widened. I thought, she started, but Ethan cut her off with a sharp glare. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. Looks like the Vegas glow wore off faster than you thought. The confrontation stretched on, words cutting sharper than knives. Lily stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with cruelty. You think you're so smart, Clara, but you're bitter, alone, and 34. What do you even have left? The words landed like stones, but instead of breaking me, they lit something inside. I took a step forward, close enough to see the twitch at the corner of her mouth. What do I have left? I said softly. I have my house, my career, my freedom, and I don't have Ethan anymore, which honestly feels like a blessing. Ethan flinched. Margaret muttered something under her breath. Rebecca's voice broke the silence. It was quieter, shakier than I expected. Ethan, did you know she canceled all your cards? His face darkened, and for a split second I saw it, the flicker of panic. I let the moment hang in the air. Then, slowly, deliberately, I pulled out my phone. Rebecca, you might want to know, your new husband's company has a strict no fraternization policy. I wonder what HR would think of this little Vegas adventure. Rebecca's head snapped toward Ethan. You said it wouldn't matter. He barked, Shut up! The garage felt charged, the air thick with everyone's breathing. Finally, I stepped back. You have 1 hour to load up and leave. After that, the locks change again, and the rest of his junk goes on the curb. Margaret opened her mouth to protest, but Ethan grabbed a box, his movements jerky. Rebecca stood frozen, her eyes darting between us. I turned and walked back into the house, shutting the door firmly behind me. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. from adrenaline, from the dawning realization that I wasn't powerless anymore. Through the window, I watched them struggle with the boxes, their voices raised in sharp bursts. Rebecca arguing, Margaret snapping, Lily sneering, Ethan sweating under the weight of his own belongings. And I thought, let them carry it. Every box, every lie, every consequence. Let them carry it because I don't have to anymore. When the last box was gone, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the quiet driveway. The house felt different now, still wounded, but lighter somehow, like it was shedding his presence piece by piece. I knew Ethan wouldn't give up easily. He never did. But for the first time in years, I felt ready. Whatever storm he brought next, I would meet it head on. Because the locks had turned, and so had I. I should have known peace wouldn't last. Ethan was never the type to leave quietly. Losing control always made him desperate, and desperate people thrash hardest when they're drowning. It started 2 days later. I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Notifications stacked up like a storm surge. Facebook tags, Instagram DMs, even LinkedIn messages from old coworkers I hadn't spoken to in years. Ethan had launched a campaign. His words, his mother's words, his sister's words, plastered across every platform they could touch. Clara Jensen is an abusive narcissist. She trapped Ethan in a loveless marriage. She manipulated him financially and emotionally. She made him so miserable, he had no choice but to find real love. The smear hit like a gut punch. Screenshots of their posts scrolled across my phone. Margaret crying in selfies. Lily posing dramatically with captions about protecting her brother. And Ethan smiling grimly beside Rebecca, writing about how he'd finally escaped me. What unsettled me most wasn't their lies. It was how easily some people believed them. Comments from mutual friends bled beneath the posts. Wow, I never knew Clara was like that. She always seemed controlling. Good for you, Ethan. You deserve happiness. I dropped my phone onto the counter, my hands shaking. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was a war. That afternoon, I called David. David wasn't just a friend. He was the kind of man who could rebuild a crashed laptop blindfolded. He'd been in our circle for years. Always the one to fix Wi-Fi at parties. The guy people called when their phone died mid-road trip. Hey, Clara, he answered, his voice sharp with concern. You okay? I've been seeing things. I swallowed hard. They're everywhere, David. He's turning people against me. I don't even know where to start. You start, he said, by fighting back, and I think I know how. By evening, David was at my kitchen table, his laptop glowing in the dim light. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling threads from places I didn't know threads existed. Ethan thinks he's smart, David muttered, but he's careless, always has been. Let's see. Jackpot. On the screen, messages appeared. Facebook chats, stretching back more than a year. Ethan and Rebecca, weaving a smug, ugly history. I leaned closer, bile rising as I read. She's so stupid. I've been siphoning money from her grocery account for months. Almost saved enough for our dream wedding, babe. Can't wait to see her face when we're gone. Message after message, bragging, mocking, scheming, not just cheating, but plotting. My favorite, or maybe the most damning, was one from Rebecca. You think she'll notice the missing cash? Ethan replied, Nah, Clara's too boring to check. David whistled low. This is gold. Want me to package it? I nodded. My chest was tight, but not with fear anymore, with something sharper. Anger, cold and precise. Within hours, David had screenshots ready. I posted them. No commentary, no emotional paragraphs, just proof. The internet flipped. The same friends who had whispered doubts flooded back with apologies. Comments turned brutal, against Ethan. Wow, so you were the manipulator all along. Stealing from her grocery account? That's disgusting. Rebecca girl, you married a clown. For the first time in days, I exhaled, but Ethan didn't. His desperation grew teeth. First, his father called my boss. Claimed I was harassing Ethan, stalking him, threatening his new wife. My boss, a no-nonsense woman who knew the whole story, called me into her office. She slid her phone across the desk. On the other end, Ethan's father's voice screeched. She's ruining Ethan's life. My boss pressed mute, rolled her eyes. Don't worry, Clara. He's wasting his breath. Just thought you'd want to hear how pathetic this is. Next came the break-in attempt. 300 km. AM. Motion cameras caught Ethan himself at my back door, rattling the handle, whisper shouting into his phone. She locked me out. My stuff's still in there. The footage was clear, his angry face illuminated by my porch light. I sent it straight to my lawyer. Then came the absurd claims. He told mutual friends I'd killed his cat. I almost laughed, until I realized some people believed him. The irony? Ethan knew I was allergic. We'd never owned a cat. Finally, he stooped even lower. He called my mother, crying. She doesn't understand, Mrs. Jensen. I made a mistake. Rebecca means nothing. Clara is my life. I was sitting beside my mom on the couch when she answered. I'll never forget her expression, half disgust, half pity. You should have thought about that before sleeping with Rebecca for 8 months, she said, her voice cool as glass. Then she hung up. I squeezed her hand. My throat burned, but I swallowed it down. Thanks, Mom. She kissed my forehead. You're stronger than he ever deserved. The next day, I received the most surreal phone call of all. Hi, is this Clara? A woman's voice, polite but strained. This is Sarah. I'm Ethan's mother-in-law, Rebecca's mom. I froze. Yes? She sighed. Look, Ethan made a mistake. Young men do stupid things. He can't afford a wife right now. Could you maybe take him back, just until he gets on his feet? I almost dropped the phone. You're asking me to take back the man who cheated on me, so your daughter doesn't have to deal with consequences? Well, when you put it that way, you sound selfish. Marriage is about forgiveness. I laughed. It came out sharp, brittle. Marriage is about respect, and your daughter married a man who has none. Then I hung up. That night, my phone lit up again, a blocked number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. Ethan's voice, ragged and venomous. You ruined my life, Clara. I hope you're happy. My reply was automatic, cold, final. I am, actually. Thanks for asking. I ended the call, blocked the number, and set my phone face down. The silence after was heavy, but this time it didn't scare me, because I knew the worst was yet to come, and I was ready to face it. The courthouse smelled of old paper and faint disinfectant, the kind of place where lives unraveled under fluorescent lights. I arrived early, dressed in a simple navy dress and heels that clicked too loudly against the tiled floor. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Miranda, walked beside me like a shield. I wasn't nervous, not really. The weeks of chaos had burned that out of me. What I felt instead was a strange anticipation, as though I were about to watch the final act of a play I'd already read the script for. And then Ethan walked in. He wasn't alone. Rebecca trailed behind him, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her once proud chin dipped toward the floor, her white cardigan hanging loosely from her shoulders. Margaret swept in next, her perfume strong enough to sting, with Lily glued to her side. Ethan tried to meet my eyes across the courtroom, his expression a mixture of arrogance and desperation. I looked straight through him. The judge entered, a tall man with weary eyes that had clearly seen too many soap operas played out in real life. We all rose, then sat. Ethan's lawyer, a slick man in an ill-fitting suit, stood first. Your Honor, my client contests the validity of the so-called Vegas marriage. He was under emotional duress, manipulated into signing papers while intoxicated. The judge raised one eyebrow. Duress? Intoxication? That's quite a claim. Miranda rose smoothly. Your Honor, I have here 73 pages of Facebook messages, screenshots of texts, and financial records showing Mr. Jensen not only planned this affair for over a year, but bragged about siphoning money from my client to fund it. She held up a thick folder. The sound of it hitting the judge's desk was like a gavel itself. The judge flipped through the papers, his expression shifting from professional neutrality to disgusted amusement. He paused, then read aloud. Can't wait to see her stupid face when she realizes I took her for everything. His eyes lifted slowly to Ethan. Mr. Jensen, did you write this? Ethan's face flushed scarlet. That's out of context. The judge leaned back. What context makes that sound better? Silence. Rebecca shifted uncomfortably, her face pale. Miranda pressed forward. Your Honor, not only did Mr. Jensen commit adultery, he also committed bigamy. He legally married another woman while still married to my client. The evidence is indisputable. Ethan's lawyer tried again, his voice faltering. Well, technically, my client believed the marriage with Ms. Jensen was already... The judge cut him off with a raised hand. Belief doesn't override law. He signed marriage documents while still bound by his first marriage. That's bigamy. And I'm frankly appalled I have to explain that. The courtroom murmured. Lily muttered something under her breath, earning a sharp glare from the bailiff. Finally, the judge delivered his decision. Divorce is granted. Ms. Jensen retains full ownership of her home and assets. Mr. Jensen receives only his personal belongings and his vehicle, for which he remains financially responsible. Additionally, due to Ms. Jensen's financial support of Mr. Jensen's professional certification last year, he will pay 6 months of alimony at $500 per month. The gavel cracked. Final. Absolute. I didn't smile, not outwardly, but inside, relief unfurled like a long-held breath. Ethan, on the other hand, looked as though someone had stolen the ground beneath him. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Rebecca buried her face in her hands. Margaret clutched her pearls dramatically. And Lily? She just glared at me, like daggers could undo legal rulings. But the true spectacle began outside. As soon as we stepped onto the courthouse steps, Margaret erupted. "This is theft! You stole from my baby!" Her voice cracked like a crow's screech, drawing stares from everyone on the sidewalk. Rebecca's mother, Sarah, had shown up too, clutching a coffee cup and muttering about young love. The shouting escalated quickly. Lily lunged forward, a paper cup of coffee in her hand. She threw it toward me, missed, and the liquid splattered all over Sarah's blouse. Sarah gasped, "You idiot!" Margaret snapped back, "Watch your tone, tramp." And just like that, a full-blown coffee fight broke out between two mothers on the courthouse steps. Shrieks, splashes, security guards rushing in. I stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching the chaos like it was a badly written comedy show. Miranda leaned toward me and whispered, "I have had divorce trials less dramatic than this lunch break." Notably absent from the melee, Ethan. He had already slunk away, his shoulders hunched, Rebecca trailing behind him like a shadow. He didn't even look back. Rumor later reached me that he'd found comfort in the arms of a 22-year-old bartender he'd met the night of the Vegas wedding. Rebecca had lost the gamble before the chips even hit the table. That night, I sat in my quiet kitchen again. The house hummed with silence, but it was a different kind now. Not heavy, not oppressive, peaceful. I poured myself a glass of wine and thought about the irony of it all. For years, Ethan had accused me of being too cold, of not being emotional enough, of shutting him out. But it was that very detachment that had saved me. When the text came, when the lies spilled out, when the police knocked, I hadn't screamed or begged. I'd acted, and that had made all the difference. I lifted the glass in a small toast to no one but myself. "To closure," I whispered. The divorce decree felt less like an ending and more like the lifting of a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. In the weeks that followed, my life began to stitch itself back together. I sold the house. The market was insane, and the offers came in faster than I could keep track. Within a month, I had signed papers, handed over keys, and walked away with a profit I never expected. Instead of another suburban house with too many rooms echoing with absence, I bought a condo downtown. Smaller, sleeker, overlooking the city lights. It felt alive, vibrant, like starting over on my own terms. Ethan, meanwhile, was unraveling. I didn't seek out updates, but gossip has a way of finding you. Margaret couldn't resist calling my mother, and Lily's cryptic Facebook posts practically begged for interpretation. Rebecca had dumped him, not in some quiet, amicable way, but in a very public, very humiliating blowout. She had discovered the bartender, a 22-year-old with glossy hair and sharp eyeliner, who had caught Ethan's wandering eye the very night of their Vegas vows. Rebecca packed her bags and stormed out, but not before posting a bitter essay online about how Ethan had deceived her. The irony was almost too delicious. To make matters worse, their company's HR department had finally caught wind of the Vegas stunt. Strict no fraternization policy. Both Ethan and Rebecca were fired. 1 week married, 1 week unemployed. And apparently, Ethan was back in his old bedroom at Margaret's house, living on takeout and excuses. The rest of the family drama rippled outward like aftershocks. Lily, always dramatic, posted about toxic family members and hinted at cutting ties. She didn't specify who, but it was obvious. Margaret had become infamous at her local Starbucks. After screaming at a barista who looked vaguely like me, calling her that witch, she was banned from 2 locations. Rebecca's mother, Sarah, had the audacity to sue Ethan, for emotional damages to her daughter. The case went nowhere, but the mess left scars in their social circles. Meanwhile, Ethan's reputation crumbled. Former friends whispered about him, coworkers distanced themselves. Every screenshot, every post I'd released lived online forever. He had gambled everything for a neon Vegas wedding, and the house always wins. As for me, I moved forward. The gym I had once dragged myself to out of obligation became a place of quiet rebuilding. It was there I met Jacob, steady, kind, and funny, in a way that didn't demand attention but offered comfort. He'd heard whispers of my saga, but never pried. One morning, he brought me coffee after our workout. The cup had a name scribbled on it in black marker. I frowned at it, confused, until I realized it said, "Not Ethan." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled it. Jacob grinned. "Thought you could use the reminder." For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something loosen inside me. Not dependence, not desperation, just lightness. Miranda, my lawyer, had one final gift. At our last meeting, she handed me a frame. Inside it was a copy of the Vegas marriage certificate, Ethan and Rebecca's names scrawled in ink beneath the neon chapel logo. She smirked. "Easiest case of my career. Thought you might want a souvenir." I hung it in my condo, not as a wound, but as a trophy. Proof that betrayal can be outlived. One evening, months later, I ran into an old acquaintance at a bookstore. We chatted politely, and then she lowered her voice. "Have you heard? Ethan's mom apparently called Rebecca a gold-digging succubus at her book club." The words caught me so off guard that I burst out laughing in the middle of the aisle. Heads turned. I didn't care. Poetic justice, delivered by the very people who once swore he was their golden boy. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to that text message. "Just married Rebecca. You're pathetic, BTW." Once, those words might have haunted me. Now, they're nothing but a punchline. Because here's the truth I finally learned. People like Ethan write their own downfall. All you have to do is let them. I raise my glass of wine on my balcony, city lights shimmering below. "To stupid games," I whisper, "and even stupider prizes." I smile.